our emphasis on the book is very important. That we started out maybe the first 3 years only doing printed matter, essentially. The first 2 or 3 years was, books, artist books, and we've published several books in the past 4, 5, 6 years. And if the first half of our first 2 or 3 years was primarily print, the last 2 or 3 years has become more has incorporated other media, sculpture, installations, lectures, performances. But the fact is that the book is like you were saying, the book is
a starting point and
it's a starting and I would say an ending point, but it doesn't ever end with a book. So it begins with books and it goes further with books. And in fact, you could argue, for us, everything else, the sculptures, the banners, the performances, all those are a premise or to bring people back to the book. In fact, the real work of secession is in fact even more important than the installation you saw at the Vienna secession. And that's the reversal of normal dynamics within art, contemporary art, which is where the book is usually an afterthought. Usually you do an exhibition and then you document it in a book. And that's why they call it a catalog. And for us, we're very adamant about this, is we don't, it's important. The book for us is a platform for knowledge and for research, for thoughts, which ultimately is much more important than any given object per se. The object is a way, or the sculpture, no matter how important it is for us, it is a means to bring people back to the book. This kind of riverbed is a kind of vernacular architecture that you find across kiosks and tea houses and gas stations and outside of mosques and restaurants all across Iran and Central Asia. And what you do is here you have a family of 4 or group of 5 friends that sit together in a collective space, and it's the closest thing to a salon or public space, if you will, like where you can discuss different subject matters, or where women and men can interact in public in places where that kind of interaction amongst unmarried women and men, for example, in Iran, is not allowed. So this is it's become a quite important fixture in our practice, this riverbed. Reading is not only an analytical, intellectual, sort of cerebral activity.
This was this idea of spending time with the content. So rather than just seeing the piece or interacting with it once you're in front of it, this was this idea that with a book you can really spend time with the content. In a similar way, I think this is why we're interested in working in public space. This idea that, for example, if we do a fountain or if we do a mola toy on which kids can rock, or adults, is this idea that you can spend time with an object or with a subject. The first thing we always do when we work on projects is research. It's very often research trips, so usually that's one thing we try to do together. Depending on, like for example, the last project was about Central Asia, so we would make sure that we go on a research trip together. And then of course there, it's sometimes the inspirations are formal, purely formal. Sometimes inspirations are text-based or historical, and it varies. It's not important to us to stay anonymous for the sake of being anonymous. It's just to highlight the idea that it's not about us as sole artists.
In the same way that the art is not about, I mean, let's say relatively to much contemporary art, it's not about our experiences or our biographies. It's not about how we were raised, or it's not about any experience we had growing up, which is a perfectly valid premise for making art, but for us it's not what interests us. What interests us is the world outside.
It's very important for us that the emphasis is not on us, the emphasis on the content. The emphasis for us is really on Eurasia or the content that we're trying to present.